how do you call a stored procedure with Entity Framework? So here we are in SQL Server Management Studio, and we have our database here called school, and then we have a table called students. And what we want to do is, rather than directly query the students table, we actually want to use a stored proc or get active students. And all the stored proc does is basically return students where they are active. So is active is equal to 1. This is a very simple stored proc. So what we'll do is we will click on this execute button to create this stored proc, and this stored procedure is now in the database. So in our C# application, you can see we do have a student class, and the properties of this student class match of the table. So what we want to do is we want to actually, rather than manually specifying the active students, so rather than saying it is active equals 1, we actually just want to use the stored proc because somebody have already written that logic for us in the database, and we want that in one single place in the database rather than in our application, that logic to get active students. We will simply call that stored proc, but notice here we're using context. So that's basically the connection to the database. And notice here we're using the students DB set. So this will provide the necessary mapping of all the fields that will be output by the stored proc over here, and it will map them to the class that we have here, so that we are able to do things such as this, which is loop through the active students and print their names or whatever it is that we want to do. So if I now run this code, then here you can see the output that we got. So we've got 2 students, Ali and John, and their names are our output here because they are the only active students. So if we go over to our database here, you can see that we have Sarah, who is a student that is not active. So her name is not being displayed in our application because the logic of the stored procedure takes that out. So the SQL statement is written here. So back in our application, you can see it was very easy for us to execute the stored proc by just using the from SQL row method over here and just executing the stored proc by using the exact get active students. And the mapping is taken care of by Entity Framework to the relevant fields that we have in the database versus what we have in the C# class for the student over here.